All right, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your humble, gracious host, Richie Mars, and we're doing something a little bit different today. This is our first ever fantasy booking episode. And of course, I have to bring on my knowledgeable friend here because he helped me with the whole invasion episode. And now we're going to make our own invasion match card. I'm here with Marcus. Marcus, how you doing?
What is going on? You
Now,
know?
there's a lot of things going on because as we were talking off air, fantasy booking, you go down a weird rabbit hole of just like, oh, what if we could do this and that? So the first thing I wanted to ask was, this was your idea. I'm not going to take any credit for it, but I will
Yeah.
happily do so and expose it on the show. What gave you the idea for a rebooking of the Invasion pay-per-view card?
Because it wasn't good. Like let's be honest. Like the whole thing was a certified dumpster fire. And I'm not in the room. I'm not in the writer's room. I'm not a booker. But at the same time, you can objectively say this was like not the best pay-per-view. Even though like the story pulled people in, sure, people were invested in the story, but the pay-per-view wasn't good, and then everything that just happened afterwards was not that good either. So it's like, hmm.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. But despite the fact that the Invasion pay per view was criticized, was met with kind of mixed reviews, and it could have been so much more. It showed anything but that. As one of my bottles falls over right here. The attendance for the event was 17,876, which was pretty major for a non-Big Four WWE pay-per-view. And the
Mm-hmm.
buy rate was 775,000, which is, at the time, 2001, close to WrestleMania numbers.
Yeah, like it was one of the biggest pay-per-views, if not the biggest pay-per-view, not only of that year, but like you said last time, it beat out some sizable opponents as well
Mhm.
for a long while. So it's people wanted to see the story.
Like, imagine for any non-wrestling fan who are listening into this podcast, imagine if Marvel and DC had an ultimate crossover like movie, but instead of you getting Batman and Superman, you get Calendar Man, and you get you
You get like Calendar Man and like the what with the hunter from Spider-Man.
yeah. Oh, Craven the
Craig
Hunter,
Raven, yeah.
and you're just like it's like, but they slap like Marvel versus DC like on the poster, like they're building it up, but you don't have the necessary star power to do it. But with this fantasy booking, everything we're throwing everything out the window for it. Like if anybody had like contracts like that they still needed to sit out on, if people were injured during this time, if The Rock was making a movie, we're ex-naying all of that. We're doing, if we had everybody on the table to appear at this show, and we're going to customize it to our own liking. But before we do that, I'm just going to go over the original Invasion card. Now, the original Invasion card had 11 matches, including one pre-show matches on Heat. But Marcus and I, we decided to do 10 matches for the main pay-per-view card, but this was the Invasion pay-per-view card. You had on Sunday night Heat Chavo Guerrero defeating Scotty 2 Hotty, and then the actual pay-per-view itself, Edge and Christian defeated Lance Storm and Mike Awesome. Earl Hebner defeated Nick Patrick in a referee versus referee match.
Dude, that was a highlight of the night.
With with Nick,
That should have been the final match right
should have
there.
been at least semi-main.
Yeah.
You had APA, the WWF Tag Team Champions, against Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare for the WCW Tag Team Champions, who were the WCW Tag Team Champions. Then you had Billy Kidman defeat X-Pac. Then Raven versus William Regal. And you had Canyon, Hugh Morris, Sean Stasiak defeat Albert Big Show and Billy Gunn. You got
Mm.
Tajiri defeating Taz. Probably one of the only good matches on the show. Rob Van Dam defeated Jeff Hardy for the Hardcore Championship. Then you had Trish Stratus and Lita defeat Tori Wilson and Stacy Keibler in a bra and panties tag team match with Mick Foley as the special guest referee. And then you had the inaugural brawl with Booker T, Bubba Ray Dudley, Diamond Dallas Page, Devon Dudley, Rhino, defeat Chris Jericho, Kane, Kurt Angle, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Undertaker. So, pretty mixed bag of a pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
Seemed very rushed because, well, it was. So, Marcus and I were here to fix it with our own card. Now
Yeah,
we
we're gonna.
like I said, we both made two separate cards, and we're gonna alternate. We're gonna start from the bottom, and then we're gonna go up to the main event. So, Marcus, are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, I'm gonna throw it to you first. What's your opening match?
So my opening match is D'Lo versus Chris Canyon.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
How about yourself? What do you got for the opening match?
So I'm starting off a little hot. I'm going Falls Count Anywhere match. It's a tag match with Tommy Dreamer and Raven against the Holly Cousins.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a solid opener right there.
Yeah, let's talk about
I could see that.
our openings for a minute. What made you go with D'Lo and Chris Canyon? Because both of them, in my opinion, are kind of like unsung heroes in their respective time periods. Like they were both kind of ahead of their time.
Well, I would say that's a big reason. Like D'Lo and Chris Canyon are two guys who didn't necessarily make it to the top of the mountain, but they weren't bad workers at all. Like they put on very good matches, and like you said, they were ahead of their time and really kind of got looked over, and they were all phenomenal. Like both of them put on very good matches, had very good like ring psychology, and it would have just been like a good match to see,
Mhm.
to draw people in.
I think for a large period of time, especially with D'Lo and Canyon, those were like the two where it's like you just wanted to see them like break through that glass ceiling just a little bit more because you knew if they got that opportunity, they would have knocked it out of the park. But unfortunately, since their respective companies were hot at the time,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why should we
Yeah.
elevate this person a little bit further when we're doing so well as is? You know, and again, during that time, it was a very competitive atmosphere, and it would be a
Mm-hmm.
good showcase, for, especially for a pay per view like this, for both of them to showcase their stuff. Now, do you have a winner determined with this match?
No, I did not have a winner. I didn't want to pick anybody specific for winning
Mhm.
any of the matches, but it was more so just like who do I think would be a good match overall.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely see because it's really hard because they were doing like the whole scoreboard thing with the invasion thing, and
Yeah.
it kind of like took kind of the anticipation away from the pay per view because you knew like leading up it was gonna kind of like even out until the very
Hmm.
end. So yeah, I could definitely see that thought process. But for why I chose for my match with the Falls Count Anywhere with Tommy Dreamer and Raven against the Holly Cousins, basically two teams that don't like each other. you know,
Yeah, yeah. Like
because Raven and Tommy Dreamer had their feud like for years and years in ECW, and the Holly Cousins' whole like gimmick was just them fighting each other.
true. And it's one of those like we don't like each other, however, we like this other team less.
Hmm.
So here we go. Let's do it.
Yeah, yeah, it's just like just a nice little brawl going on, and yeah, just like you, I haven't really thought of winners, just like matches that I think that would be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, like I didn't think about it as like a win-loss thing. It was more so just kind of like pulled like an Animal Planet. It's just like Super Gorilla versus Mecha T-Rex, you know. So that's kind of,
It's like epic rap battles of history.
yeah, it's not necessarily a winner or a loser in the situation.
Yeah.
However, I just want to see these two duke it out.
Well, there is a winner. The fans are the winner.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Star swipe.
All right, let's go to our second match right here. And Marcus, you take the floor and we'll discuss your match a little bit.
All right. So what's funny is I thought of this match and it actually was on the card, and I was completely unaware.
Mhm.
I had Kidman and X Pac.
Really?
Yeah, Kidman and X Pac was one that I was just like, yo, I would love to just see them go at it, because for the two of them, again, both very good wrestlers, both very athletic, kind of got outshined, especially because they were both in factions,
Hmm.
got outshined by the factions that they were in. You know, X Pac with DX, and then Billy with Filthy Animals. It was like, yeah, it was they were both very good,
Hmm.
but at the same time, they just happened to be around stars that shined brighter.
Yeah, I definitely see that in that time period because Billy Kidman, they did give him opportunities in WCW. Like I remember he
Hmm.
had like a feud with Hulk Hogan, but again, he didn't necessarily look the best in that feud, and that kind of hurt his stock a little bit until he rejoined with Rey Mysterio. And again, like that group, the Filthy Animals, Billy was great. He was a great straight man, kind of like working off of all these over the top personalities because you had Ray, you had Tori, you had Eddie, you had Conan, and
Yeah.
he was just pretty much like the straight person of the group at that time period. And along with X Pac, X Pac is what I think is like a definition of a faction man. You know, like he works well in factions.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that, like you said, like he works well in a team.
Mhm.
It's almost kind of like he is good enough to cover other people's blind spots, and other people will elevate him because they will cover his blind spots as well.
Mhm.
So it kind of, I kind of get what you're saying. Yeah, he's a very good like faction guy.
Yeah, like going back to the Avenger movies, like for the longest time, Scarlet Witch, or not Scarlet Witch, Scarlett Johansson, who was Black
Uh-huh.
Widow, for a while, she would just show up in other people's movies, and everyone's like, "Oh, she should get her own movie." You know what I mean? But she helped these other movies be enhanced more by her presence. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's kind of like what X Pac was during the whole NWO and DX. His presence did mean a lot, but when you take him out of that foothold and you have to kind of put him by himself, for whatever reason, he didn't really connect the same. There was the term X Pac heat that I know was a
Yeah.
thing for a while, which was like
Yeah.
change the channel kind of heat because X Pac he kind of rode that wave of that DX train in WW with that little to no variations. Like they tried here because I believe he was with X Factor for a bit.
Mhm.
But when you have a group that doesn't necessarily have a goal in mind, you're just kind of like in a holding pattern.
Yeah, it's kind of like we have these three things. Let's just put them together and see if they work.
Hmm.
That was the kind of feeling with that.
Yeah. But my second match, it was actually a similar thought process to you because I went with a cruiserweight match, but I
Okay.
did a four way. I did Tajiri versus Hurricane versus X
Mm.
Pac versus Psychosis.
Nice.
Yeah, so I figure like a lot of like similar but different styles in a way with Tajiri. He had like the martial arts background, a little crazy
Hmm.
background. Then you had the Hurricane, who was just freshly, I believe he was just turning into the Hurricane, or this was a little bit before, so he could be Shane Helms. But if that's the case,
Yeah.
I'll keep him as Sugar Shane Helms for
Yeah.
this one. And then you have
Hmm.
X Pac, like we just mentioned, like he works well with multiple people, and I think this would be no different. And then you have Psychosis, who I don't think really got a fair shake when it came to him in WWE
No,
and
he didn't.
like compared to him in like ECW, WCW. And I figured this would be like a great showcase for him. And
Hmm.
a little later down the line, I believe a year later, he would actually be in the first TNA X Division Championship match. And I remember because his entrance, he just like started like flipping people off, and it was just like so like weird to me because like I knew Psychosis from like when I started watching was from WWE, and then I got like an AJ Styles DVD, and I just plugged it in, and then just shows Psychosis just flipping people off, just flipping the bird. I'm just like, I didn't think Psychosis was a heel. Like I always thought he was pretty much a babyface for his entire tenure.
To my knowledge, he was pretty much a babyface, but I also think that was just like booking, is
Hmm.
because coming out of WCW, he was pretty much a babyface. Like there really wasn't any luchadors or that were heels, because like think about it, you had him, you had Juventud, you had Ray,
Hmm.
you had I mean Jericho when he was Kid Pegasus,
Yeah.
like all these guys, the majority of your luchadors were baby faces.
Yeah, like that's how they were usually portrayed to a certain extent. Just because I think their style, at least for the mainstream American audience, was so enticing and so amazing with the high flying ability and just like the sequences they would do, that it would be hard to boo. And I think that's a problem that wrestling does have now when it comes to people needing to be heels, is that it's more about the moves than it
Mm-hmm.
is about actually trying to get heat or just slowing things down. And look at me, I turned 30 and now I'm just like one of those guys like, oh, they're going too fast. But it's just like that's kind of like how it is, where like you have these amazing athletes that should do great things, but they should be cheered for their efforts. And if you're trying to be a bad guy, you shouldn't be doing that as much. That's just my own opinion.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like it sometimes, again, it's the old saying, style over substance.
Hmm.
You know, people get so flashy and rush to these crazy spots that you know it gets lost. Like yes, there is a spectacle, yes there's a highlight, but it's almost like the anticipation isn't there. It's like a kid when you give them money and it burns a hole in their pocket. They're like, I have to do it now. I have to do the thing now.
Yeah.
And it's just like, just wait a little bit. Like you'll
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
know.
It's like the old saying, it's not what you make, it's what you save.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't save the third match any longer. So, Marcus, your third match.
So I have Al Snow versus Jerry Lynn in a tables match.
Ooh, okay. Let's see where you're going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great workers, great undercard guys. Didn't really get the shine
Hmm.
that I think either of them deserved, but could always put on a really good match.
Yeah, especially with Al Snow, because he was like labeled in the 90s the best kept secret in wrestling for a long while. You know, he never got his full fledged break until I think he was from like 15 years in the business, I want to say. Like, because
Yeah,
he was like working and grinding, because he was in ECW, he was in WWF. He was the Avatar, if you remember the Avatar. He was part of the New Rockers, and he really
yeah,
didn't get to that level of superstardom until he was uh, with the Mannequin Head. You know,
yeah,
and that was in ECW, WWE. And unfortunately, I don't think WWE really capitalized on Al Snow. And Brian Gerwertz, who was the WWE writer at the time, in his autobiography, there's just one problem with that. He mentioned it's how he's a big Al Snow fan, and he would constantly make pitches for Al Snow to be on television. But he later learned that it got to a point where Vince McMahon said, like Vince would get like so aggravated that he kept mentioning Al Snow's name, and that was like one of the lessons where it's like you can fight for these guys to get on television, but if you do it more and more
too
and more,
much.
yeah,
Yeah.
then they're gonna get sick of the name. I think the quote in the book is like what kind of name is Al Snow? You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
unfortunately, it's just like if the boss doesn't see anything in you, you're just not gonna get the necessary uh, time involved. Like,
Yeah.
and the thing is, he did great stuff. Like I remember the Steve Blackman head cheese thing,
Hmm.
the feud with Foley. Um, I remember him as Jonathan Coachman's like buddy in Sunday Night Heat on commentary.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
thought
That
that was
was.
pretty fun. And
Yeah,
also,
that was a good time.
and speaking of people who didn't get a fair shot in WWE, Jerry Lynn. Jerry Lynn kind of like came in, then he just left. You know, he was a very quick turnaround, I remember. And I remember him most for being like one of the unlockable characters in WWF Just Bring It.
Yeah, it was kind of like a blink and you'll miss it moment, but again, it's one of those things like if you know, you know
Mhm.
that again, great matches, great ring style, know how to put on a show.
He
So,
was nicknamed the new effing show in ECW
yeah,
too, you
yeah,
know? So it's
very,
like
yep.
that's how highly regarded he was among the fans at the time, that he was almost like a successor to Rob Van Dam.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I just wish like we would have seen a little bit more Jerry Lynn. I know him and Van Dam had like a match on Sunday Night Heat, but a lot of their stuff got cut because Sunday Night Heat is a taped show. So, and I
Yeah.
think that's when Jerry Lynn's like saying, "Yeah, I gotta, gotta get out of here." So deuces.
I mean, can you really blame the guy? It's
Nah.
like if you are constantly doing good work and you're not even being rewarded but just like acknowledged, it's like
Mhm,
it's like any other profession. If I'm doing well,
mhm.
I'm getting passed up for promotions, and I'm coming with all these ideas, and everybody's like, yeah, like all the people on the ground floor are just like, yo, you're doing well, like you I don't see what why they won't give you a shot. You have two options: you either stick it out and you try and fight for it, or you see if you can get a shot somewhere else.
Yeah, you know, and it's always hard to be the, like everyone needs to be a cog in the machine, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to be that cog that fits in multiple different places, or they could see you work in multiple different parts of that machine. So it's like, oh, I never realized this can go here. But it's like if something is like that reliable, if it ain't broke, you don't need to
Don't
fix it,
fix it.
you know.
Exactly.
And ironically, my third match is also a table match.
Hmm.
But yeah, I went a little different. You see, it's a 6-man tables match, a 6-man
Okay.
tag team. So we have Rhino, Taz, and Mike Awesome
Nice.
versus the APA, Farouk and Bradshaw, and the Big
Mhm.
Show.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. A
So
lot of heavy hitters.
just a lot of meat in this matchup, just a lot of meat because Mike Awesome was known for throwing people through tables, as
Mm-hmm.
was Rhino goring people through tables, and Taz also putting people through tables against the enforcers of the WWE, the APA. And then you have Big Show, and you could put on commentary, how can we put this man through a table? He's 500 pounds and 7 feet tall, you know? And I just like seeing multiple people go through tables. It's a nice time. And I haven't gone through one myself, but never say never in this business.
Yeah. You know, we're not dead yet.
Yeah.
You know, there's still time.
Yeah. But going back to people that were unappreciated during this era, I do think Rhino, Taz, and Mike Awesome had a lot more to give in
Mm-hmm.
WWE because in ECW they were treated like megastars, but when they get to
Yeah.
WWE, they started trying to go with Taz and Rhino at first initially, but
Mm-hmm.
then quickly they kind of like got relegated into that hardcore championship tornado where it seems like a bunch of like the ECW talent would get in through that time. And Mike Awesome being the first WCW guy winning a WWE championship on Rhino, ironically, you know, the hardcore championship. It kind of just kind of put ECW guys in a box where it's like if there's no hardcore-ness going on, then why bother?
Yeah. It was kind of like they. It's almost like if somebody glanced at say a vignette or glanced at like a highlight reel of ECW and be like, oh, so this is what you guys like, but neglected everything else.
Hmm. It's like, oh, they use chairs, they use tables. Let's put them in a hardcore match. But then you're like, what about the mat classics between Guerrero Malenko or Guerrero Benoit, you know? And then
Mm-hmm.
what about the athletic stuff of Van Dam and
Yeah.
Taz? And just like, it was extreme because extreme, it's like, oh, obviously it means fire, tables,
Yeah.
chairs, good. caveman stuff, and it's
Yeah,
like
it
it's just
was.
like if ECW were to evolve, and Paul Heyman said this on like an Inside the Ropes um, event where he's like, we would have evolved ECW into what Ring of Honor would be like
Okay.
then, because when ECW left, that's when Ring of Honor kind of like peaked up, and it was actually ran by Heyman's apprentice Gabe Sapolsky,
Okay.
who worked for ECW, and basically Sapolsky kind of took what Heyman did and then formulated Ring of Honor. And like Paul Heyman even said, like he would have gone after the Punks, the Cenas, the Lesners, because it's like with anything in business in general, you have to evolve or get left behind, and that brand of extreme was going to get left behind regardless.
Yeah, especially like you got stuff like safety and the work rate and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So, yeah. And also if you're trying to make that like a viable thing across the board, it's kind of difficult to do when, people are blading and
Hmm.
stuff's going crazy and, it's sex, drugs, rock and roll all the time.
Right? Yeah,
It
yeah,
it's still a product that you have to market.
yeah. And it's a product you need to market, and you need to market at least a little bit safely, as we've seen like later down the line, like WWE switched to a more PG product.
Mhm.
And it took a while for them to figure out the lines between PG and an entertaining product, but it's like that's what you had to do in order to be safe in the marketplace, essentially for
Yeah.
your brand. But
Yeah.
anyway, we got three each solid matchups right now. Let's go to the fourth one.
All right. So I have Kurt Angle versus Taz in a submission match.
Oh, I was thinking about that one too. I was thinking Angle and Taz.
Yeah. Given, the Taz mission versus the ankle lock, and they're both very athletic. They're both good wrestlers. They're both, people are getting suplexed, people are getting German suplexed. It would be a really good, just like headbutting, like they could wear each other down, they can make each other tap out, and then that could go kind of deeper into the lore, especially like let's say, like I said earlier, I'm not really picking winners, but let's say Taz makes Angle tap. Angle was known for that,
Hmm.
so now it's kind of like they have their own little like submission rivalry.
Hmm. And especially since like Taz debuted, he debuted against Angle at Madison Square Garden. And
Mm-hmm.
another thing, the Taz mission, that's the first recognized tap out in wrestling history. Like he was the
Mm.
first one to do the have his opponents tap out in like a wrestling
Oh,
ring.
okay.
Yeah, so it's like it's very interesting to have like you said, the backgrounds, because Taz has like that judo background, Angle has
Mm-hmm.
obviously the Olympic background with wrestling, and it could be a very big like Matt classic that we didn't really see at the Rumble, because that was more of a showcase for Taz. And now with Angle, who was progressing at an alarming rate at this time, and he was still
Yes.
relatively a rookie when Taz debuted. Like he's still a rookie now, but in 2001, Kurt Angle was probably, if not what, he was the best wrestler in the world in WWE.
Oh yeah, like
Like
pure
for
talent.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's like not even close. Like I don't think anyone's first year, other than maybe like Brock Lesnar, has been as impressive as Kurt Angle.
Mm-hmm.
And Kurt Angle is like 5 inches shorter than Brock, and like
Yeah.
50 pounds lighter than Brock too. So
Yeah, and he's one of those guys that can just rustle a paper bag and make it look good.
and
Like,
it's just amazing how talented like both these guys were and are, and
mm-hmm.
that they're
Yeah,
still like having a career one way or another in the wrestling industry. It's just very impressive.
absolutely. All
Now,
right, so what do you
ooh,
got?
okay, I got a tag match here.
Okay.
I got Edge and Christian
Okay.
against DDP and Canyon.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it's like I always loved the Edge and Christian tag team. Very entertaining, and I figure with DDP doing the positively Diamond Dallas Page character with Canyon. I know they were a team for a bit during this time as well. And we get DDP as far away as The Undertaker as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And, start them slow a little bit. And then we work DDP and Canyon on their way up. And with Edge and Christian, we continue to see their little bit of divide because during this time, Edge won the King of the Ring trophy, and Christian was still carrying it like it was his own, and you still have that breakup going on. And as we are recording this, Edge or Adam Copeland and Christian Cage are feuding to this day, and the more things change, the more they stay the
Stay
same.
the same. Absolutely.
Time is a flat circle in the wrestling business.
Yeah, it's again, like we spoke about it before. It's one of those ecosystems that while it changes, it will always refer back to yesteryear some way somehow. Whether it be like you'll have people that will like they'll have tribute gear,
Hmm.
and it's like one of those things like, oh, this gear is cool, and then you look it up and it's just like, this gear is a tribute to this wrestler back in this time. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like,
I
yeah,
just saw something on TikTok like LA Knight, his boots are a tribute to Nike, I think like Nike 12s or something like that.
okay.
And he liked it because it reminded him of Bret Hart's boots.
Mm,
So it's like one of those things to try to make the style your own, but also implementing tribute gear, like whether it's like a
yeah,
different color pattern or anything like that. I know Punk did like a Macho Man attire when Macho passed. So,
yeah, I
and
know. I saw Seth Rollins did the old school, the Rey Mysterio when he was dressed as the Phantom.
yeah, and he also did Dusty Rhodes, the polka dot gear too.
Yeah,
Like Seth Rollins' gears are always fire. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And all right, we're going up. We're going to match number 5, I believe. So we're
Mm-hmm.
getting to that halfway point. We're going to close out the first half. All right, Marcus, what do you have?
All right, so I actually kept the match that we talked about in the previous one, where it was the three-way with Elix Skipper,
Mhm.
Super Crazy, and Jeff Hardy.
Ooh, okay, yeah, I like that. Elix
Like,
Skipper,
all
super underrated.
dude, uh, absolutely. And again, it's one of those like, if you know, you know. Elix, like, all these guys are gonna give you good spots. They're gonna give you a good match to watch. Like, they're gonna put on a spectacle, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like anything like TLC or like, Steel Cage
Mhm.
or anything like that. But just give them the time and the space to work, and you will have memorable moments out of these three guys.
And the best part about those three guys that you mentioned, it's almost like telling an artist, "Hey, you got a blank canvas. Do what you got to do. Like, we'll give you
Mm-hmm.
anything." If you let these guys have no parameters whatsoever, they would deliver an instant classic. You had Crazy who would do like the balcony stuff. You had Hardy who obviously would just jump off any like high surface ladders, anything like that. And of course, you have Elix Skipper who's older than all these guys, but still keeping up with them as well. He had the Hurricane Rana cage bump
Bump,
in
yeah.
TNA, and he should have been a bigger deal. And
He should have.
it really, really, it really kind of irks me a little bit because I would have loved to see more of primetime Elix Skipper because that was his character on Impact, and I I remember like his theme song was like like a like a 10-second loop, and it's just like just say my name, prime time, baby, and then it would just go on from there. But also Jeff Hardy at this time, he was kind of experimenting with single success, and
Mm-hmm.
it would have been really cool to see how different his career would have been if he would stay on that trajectory of solo success.
Yeah, it's one of those big what ifs that you get when, and I think it happens for every successful tag team, because you ultimately have one that, for in one category or another, they will shine brighter than their counterpart and vice versa. Like, out of the Hardy Boys, I would say, like, match wise, Jeff outshines Matt, but I would say character wise, Matt outshines Jeff.
Mhm. I,
Like,
I'd agree with that, especially with Jeff. Like Jr. said, like Jeff Hardy's the sizzle, Matt's the steak.
yes,
And like
yeah,
Matt when he was in his prime was very. I'm not sure if basic's the right word, but his fundamentals were cleaner than Jeff. But Jeff,
yes,
his athleticism and his carefree attitude, I think, was more attractive to the wider audience. Because
mm-hmm,
if you like looked at Jeff Hardy's like past work, not only just in wrestling, but in music and art and just poetry in general, like the dude has his hand in a lot of different pots.
mm-hmm,
And it just seems like wrestling was almost like a side gig for a little bit. And then like recently, like in the past couple of years, like he put like pedal to the metal with the whole wrestling thing. And Jeff Hardy definitely is like one of the big what if questions because he was on that level of a John Cena in merchandise sales for a long time.
yeah,
And then unfortunately he had his issues and he had to leave,
mm-hmm,
you know. And with Super Crazy, here was a guy who got a shot in WWE. I don't think they fully utilized him the way that he should have been
no,
utilized. And it's funny, he like Kurt Hawkins, Brian Myers told a story in the shoot interview where he went to Johnny Ace and basically said like like I can't afford to work here anymore. And Johnny's like, what do you mean? He's like, you're paying me too low, And it's just like that it was what it is. It's unfortunate, but that's what happened. But
yeah,
my match number 5, we got
mm-hmm,
the Hardys on the brain here. But it's a
mm-hmm,
little bit different because I'm incorporating a storyline that was happening around this period of time.
okay,
So I have Rey Mysterio, Billy Kidman, and Tori Wilson, the Filthy Animals,
mm-hmm,
against Matt Hardy, Eddie Guerrero, and Lita.
okay,
So at the storyline at the time was Eddie Guerrero was trying to come in like the Hardy Boys and try to play nice with them because Matt Hardy had defeated Eddie for the European Championship, but Eddie made some saves, like he saved Lita from taking a gore. And of course, shortly after that, Eddie Guerrero was unfortunately had his demons and he was sent to rehab. But again, we're just going based off of woulda, coulda, shouldas. And of course, you had the filthy animals of Rey Mysterio, Billy Kidman, who were a very underrated team. I believe they only teamed once in WWE, and it wasn't for very long because Rey was cruiserweight champion.
mm-hmm,
And I figured that this would be like one of the pushing the story a little bit forward to see what happens with each of these teams going forward.
yeah, that'd be a really good one, and then that's something you can kind of plant your flag in as far as having these two factions bump heads and like being one of the one some of the like upper card people giving them a nice storyline but also like incorporating everybody around them.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I'd be interested to see how they would treat a Rey Mysterio or Billy Kidman in a WWE during this time.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, I personally don't think. I mean, I don't think that Ray to this day gets his just due. Um, but yeah, it would have been very interesting to see how they operate with those individuals.
And especially if they would allow him to either put his mask back on or put him as Rey Mysterio unmasked for this. I know it was WWE's idea when Rey came in to put the mask on. And the funny
Mm-hmm.
thing is, I found footage of this too. Like Rey Mysterio had like a whole gladiator set up with his like unmasked gimmick. So he would still have the baggy pants, but he had like the Scott Steiner like chainmail and and
Mm.
stuff, and he had like a gladiator helmet before his match. And I was just like, oh, that is sick. I'm not sure if it's Rey Mysterio though. you know?
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see how how everything would have panned out if that's what they were doing with him, because it would almost kind of play into when they were, they call him the giant killer. So it would be interesting to see him come out in like actual gladiator wear
Yeah, and
to
I think
kind of
that
like,
that's like a cool little Elseworld story. You know, if WWE had like an Elseworlds comic book,
yeah.
I would be interested in seeing anything like that. But okay, 5 matches down, 5 to go. What's
All
your
right.
match number 6?
So match number 6. This one for me, I was just like, all right, let's have some fun with this one. So I have Mick Foley,
Mm-hmm.
probably in the Cactus Jack persona,
Mm-hmm.
versus Sandman in a hardcore match.
Ooh, that's that's gonna go wild.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's going off the rails from the jump. But again, it's a car crash. It's like it's a train wreck. You can't look away.
Now, would you have the Cactus Jack from ECW that was trying to have the most boring matches possible, or do you think you're gonna go Cactus Jack like balls to the wall kind of match right off the jump?
Yeah, no, we're going 10 toes in with cement shoes on this one. Like we're doing it. If we're gonna do it, we're doing it.
We're getting barbed wire, we're getting kendo sticks, we're getting fire. We're
Absolutely,
gonna have
the whole shebang.
Enter Sandman, get the rights to it,
Yep,
have that play throughout the first half of the match.
absolutely. Like we're going for it.
Yeah.
All the stops.
You know, it's
All
very,
right.
very a funny Sandman story. Do you remember when Vince McMahon, the storyline Vince McMahon was gonna have like an illegitimate child and it was Hornswoggle?
Yes, I remember that because wasn't it supposed to be Mr. Kennedy?
Yeah, it was supposed to be Kennedy,
Okay,
but then Kennedy, um,
wellness violation.
wellness violation, and the story was the final two people in the ring was supposed to be Triple H and JBL. That the
Hmm.
attorney of the illegitimate child was gonna name like characteristics. It's like, oh, your son's hair is fair. He's not extreme. He's this. He's that. You know. And the thing is,
Hmm.
like Sandman, stayed in the ring because every qualification that like fit the Sandman too because he was drafted in the Raw, and like they had to improvise on the fly to get Sandman out of there. At least that was the story that Hornswoggle said
Yeah.
occurred. And would you say Cactus Jack is your favorite of the three faces of Foley?
Um. mm, if I had to pick one, see, the thing is, like, Mankind, I would say, is probably my favorite. But then again, his trajectory, it's weird, but like in a good way. Like at first, he's super disturbed. He's, he's in the boiler room. He's hanging out, and then like by the end of it, he's running around with Mr. Sacco, and everybody loves him. And there's like the one where I remember the one match he had the shopping cart, and he literally like rode it down the ramp, and everybody's losing their mind. So I would probably go Mankind.
Yeah. I just remember like this was the turn between this was like the midpoint between like the disturbed mankind and like the lovable oaf mankind
Hmm.
where he was facing like the new age outlaws with Kane and they weren't sure if Kane was going to be his partner and he's like, I got one thing to say, Michael. What I have 14 words for you. How much wood can a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And I'm just like, oh, this cat's a different breed.
He's a wild man.
He's got that dog in him.
That he does.
All right, my match number 6 is a match from the Invasion pay per view that I refuse to change because it's, in my opinion, the perfect first encounter, and that's RVD versus Jeff Hardy.
Okay, yeah,
I'd keep it exactly the same.
good. They say if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and that was the perfect introduction to Rob Van Dam as Mr. Pay per view, Mr. Monday Night, whatever you want to call him.
Whole
and
effing show.
basically launched his trajectory by having a classic match with one of the most popular stars at the time for WWE.
Absolutely.
Now, do you think they pulled the trigger late on Van Dam as a world champion?
Yes.
Mm,
I think it was the whole like he's not one of us things,
mm,
but he's always been over, always good matches. Crowd loves him. WWE, ECW. He was like you. I'm pretty sure you said he was one of the few people that was over with WWE during the invasion angle.
hmm
So here's this guy you're quote unquote not supposed to like, and the fans are cheering for him more than the homegrown talent.
hmm
Yeah. So they absolutely kind of not squandered it, but they kind of dulled his momentum a little bit.
Yeah, and with Van Dam, it's like kind of like keeping a pot simmered, right? It's like you're supposed to really let it cook, but it's like if you put it like the heat on at like a 3, it's not gonna cook as well, even though it's like you had it like at an 8 or 9 earlier.
Hmm.
And with Van Dam, he really got over at a point where like Austin was kind of on the downswing. Rock was out in Hollywood. Triple H was out with injury, and they really
Hmm.
needed someone to fill that void, and he filled it perfectly.
Yeah. Like, again, great wrestler. Um, I think he's not a bad promo guy, but I think he was just so like he was just so funny
hmm
and just kind of like laid back that you got guys like The Rock that'll come in and like roast everybody and shoot on everybody versus Van Damme's just kind of like, oh, what's up, everybody? I'm here to win.
He's like, no problem, dude.
Yeah, it was
He was very
he
aloof. He
was
was very like carefree. He was very zen,
yeah.
which you never saw in wrestling, and I think that's what made him different and relatable to a lot of
Hmm.
WWE fans at the time. Was that it was something different, and I think because the company couldn't figure out why people liked him, they were kind of afraid to letting him go all out in a sense.
Hmm.
And my favorite Van Damme story of recent, when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame, he handed Vince McMahon rolling papers. Yeah,
Nice.
I'm just, that's like, that's such a Van Damme thing to do at the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
Such a legend. All right. What's your next match, Mr. Marcus?
So we were talking about the good old ENC connection earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So I have Edge and Christian versus Christopher Daniels and Justin Credible in an elimination tag match.
Ooh, why elimination?
Stakes are higher.
Okay.
Like think about it. It's a good way to tell a story. It's a good way to kind of captivate the audience because if one person gets eliminated or if one person gets pinned or submits, the match is still ongoing. So it's just like it goes from a match to a handicap match. So now it's the drama's heightened
Mm-hmm.
and you have more room for storytelling. You have more room because like imagine if like Daniel's Incredible got it and it's just kind of like but it was like a back and forth, not necessarily a squash match. Again, you could say like, oh, like our team took out their team. So now it's heightened.
Mm-hmm.
It's the us versus them means more now.
It definitely it makes room for more intriguing storytelling with that, where you have an established team, and I'm not sure if Christopher Daniels or Just Incredible were have team before, but it makes it more believable to fight from underneath. It's like
Yeah.
you're trying to reach for the tag, but somebody's eliminated. So then the whole dynamic has shifted into that tag team atmosphere. And Christopher Daniels, again, one of the most underrated and underappreciated wrestlers, I believe, in the past 10, 15 years easily. And just incredible. Similar thing. He did well in ECW when they gave him the ball as ECW champion. He was Aldo Montoya. So yeah, I wouldn't join WWE Team WWF after that either. Wearing a jock
Yeah.
strap on your face.
Oh yeah, that ugly yellow thing.
It, it just looks so weird.
Dude, he looked like a reject Power Rangers knockoff.
I
Like,
think that was
it-
the idea behind it. Like they wanted to make it Power Ranger
yeah,
esque.
it could have like when I forget the character's name, but like when Conan first got into the business,
Max
and
Moon.
yeah, Max Moon. It was just like him versus Max Moon. It was just like this is like '90s neon vomit in the wrestling ring.
It's like if Saved by the Bell did like a wrestling episode and just
Yeah,
like came up with that costume, like, and then you had like Screech wrestle in it.
yeah.
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 But but yeah, it's very intriguing. And like we said with Edge and Christian, like their team was second to none. Probably the best team of that Attitude Era by far.
Yeah. And I mean, again, like hilarious promos.
Hmm.
They're staples in the company at that point. And you have these guys now. To my knowledge, I believe Just Incredible tagged with Lance Storm more
Hmm.
because they had their own thing. But
Yeah,
I
they were
was
the
just like,
Impact players.
yeah. But I was thinking like, Credible's a good worker, and Daniels does not get, like you said, he does not get his just dues. So why not put them together and see what comes of it?
They'd really make a very decent team. Like I would
Yeah.
definitely be interested to see how they would work off each other. All right, so now my next match. It's a little bit more inside baseball behind the story behind this match. So
Yeah.
I
Hit us with it.
so I have William Regal
Okay.
against Goldberg.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
so, so
Yeah.
so the story behind William Regal versus Goldberg, if you don't know. So Goldberg was on a hot streak on WCW. As we all know, he had that undefeated streak. And stories conflict on what happened next. So Goldberg was going to face William Regal. And Regal's side of the story is that he was told by an agent who he hasn't named to this day to say, have a good 7-minute back and forth match with Goldberg. And the match didn't turn out that well. It's a little rough. I don't think I've seen it in a while, but I remember saying, I'm like, oh, just like a couple like missed spots, here and there.
Mhm.
And when they got to the back, they were saying, why did you do the match like that? And Regal was waiting for the agent to speak up, but the agent did not speak up, which
Mm.
later led to Regal was still on WCW, but he was fired later that year, a couple months later. Goldberg's side of the story is that Regal took advantage of him in that match of his inexperience, and that's why the match turned out the way it did.
Mhm.
So with this, we'll just have like a Goldberg showcase. William Regal was the commissioner around this time for WWE,
Yeah.
and to prove that he was a leader, he would take on the best of any WCW guy, and then out comes Goldberg,
Yeah.
and then you just kind of have a showcase from there. And Regal is very underrated as everything.
Extremely.
Like there was a point where I think he was going to have a feud with the WWE Championship, but then he got popped for a wellness violation. This was like during the
Mm.
time like he won King of the Ring, and he was going to be
Mm.
like the general manager of Raw and King of the Ring at the same time, just ruling with an iron fist.
Interesting.
And I was just like, oh, that would have been so sweet. Like he won the Intercontinental Championship after that, but I'm like, oh, but what if he was just like the evil like boss tyrant that never
Mhm.
was, And I'm just like, that would have been sweet. But with this, I think a Goldberg kind of showcase with William Regal, who has fantastic comedy chops too. And
Yeah.
then you just kind of like Goldberg do his thing, like 2-3 minutes. Have Regal counter a spear with a knee at one
Mhm.
point, and then make it look as realistic as possible during that time.
Yeah.
And then you do the spear, the jackhammer, the 1-2-3, and then Goldberg is like a giant mystery because he just destroyed the commissioner. So is he with WCW? Is he with WWE? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my match over there.
Nice.
And do you think Goldberg gets too much hate?
I think Goldberg was kind of Cena before Cena.
Mhm.
So obviously there's the ongoing meme of lol Cena wins. And it was kind of like that for Goldberg. So I can see why. And I think some of it is definitely deserved because I mean you have this guy comes in, he's running through the company, squash matches, and it's kind of like, all right, man,
Hmm.
really? Like you've seen this time and time again where somebody comes in the company and it's just like they're untouchable, and it's almost kind of
Hmm.
like yawn. All right, we know they're gonna win.
Yeah.
It's time to go get a snack. It's time to use the restroom.
Hmm.
It's I get the idea of it, but I also think you can build somebody up without jobbing everybody out.
Right. It's like the Superman effect, like we were saying, like you were saying, Super Cena. And
Mhm.
Superman is the most powerful being in the DC universe. But how can you make a story interesting when the one thing that he's weak to is a rock or a non-factor? You
Mhm.
know. So with Goldberg, he had a very silent, stoic presence about him in the beginning of WCW, which was more intriguing. But when you had him with a microphone in his hand, it just didn't really feel the same way.
Yeah, it took the mystique away.
And I think WCW, because I believe it was confirmed that they were inflating Goldberg's win loss record numbers.
Yeah.
So, like, people were like, okay, now they're obviously trying to push something that was cool, and now they're making it their own thing, which I don't think fans really necessarily want to be told what to like in
Mhm.
anything, especially in wrestling, because we've seen that with Cena, with Roman,
Yep.
possibly with Cody if he ever finishes the story. It's just kind of how it works if you're not careful with the story that is being told. And with Goldberg, it's hard to make an engaging story after he's been so dominant and he then becomes one dimensional. And that is very, very, very unfortunate and very, very, very boring for the person watching. And it's like, okay, this is rinse and repeat. Like, where's the change in the formula of this story?
Yeah, and there's nothing as far as substance because it's just like, okay, why is he coming in and dominating everybody? Is there something to it? Does he have a vendetta?
Hmm.
Do, if every week I come on and I'm just absolutely pummeling people, is there something to it? Like remember Chronic
Yeah, yeah,
when
yeah.
they wanted to get them, like they wanted more matches and more TV time. So the
Hmm.
storyline was they were just interrupting everybody else's matches and like messing with everybody else,
Hmm.
which is an actual like it has meat to it versus come out, I win because I win and I'm the greatest. It's just like
Yeah, it's just
mm,
there's not much you could work with.
no.
There's no meat on the bone. There's just cut and dry. Here it is. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, and it's just like he wins. Why? Because that's what he does.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Is there anything else?
He does a
Nope.
back. He does a spear. He does a jackhammer. And bing, bada, boom. Like, yeah, it's interesting at first, but then slowly but surely, if you don't advance that story into actual odds, then it's going to be a little bit of a conundrum for the audience.
Yeah, like you could even it could have been something simple like let's say we find out down the line that the reason he's like absolutely decimating everybody is because when he was younger they told him he'd never be a good wrestler or like he's got a chip on his shoulder like
Hmm.
something like if you have this guy who is a he's a huge guy, he's built and he's just running through people, like do something
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Let's go to our next matchup. What do you have?
It's funny. Uh, the phrase Who in the blue hell are you? Can sum this whole thing up. I want Booker T versus The Rock.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why is that?
Um, Booker T, for the longest time, even though he reached pretty high peaks in WCW, coming into WWE, he was overlooked for a while,
Hmm.
and he's a good worker, puts on great matches, does solid promos, is hilarious, and it's just like, again, almost kind of like, he kind of reminded me of like the WCW version of The Rock once he, like, WCW, excuse me, was kind of like his incubation stage of his character, because in WWE, after they were done trying to bury the man, he got, they teamed him up with Goldust, and that worked. They
Hmm.
gave him the King of the Ring. That worked. He had the King Booker persona. That worked. And it's just like, you have The Rock, who, again, going from Die Rocky Die to the People's Champ. If you gave him the opportunities to figure it out, it would work. So they kind of reminded me of each other a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely see that point because with Booker T, when he first came in, his gimmick was he was the 5-time WCW champion.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much all he did. And the Spinneroonie, I give
Mm-hmm.
them credit that they try to make a simple move get heat by it, and make
Yeah.
that the definition of Booker. But at the same time, like we were saying before with Goldberg, you need to expand on that personality. And I think what they did with Booker after the fact, with the Gold Dust stuff and then the King Booker stuff, is everything they gave him, he knocked it out of the park. I know when Booker came into WWE, he didn't act like he was above anybody. According
Mm-hmm.
to the people, they were just very quiet, very humble, acted like it was any first day on the job. So Booker is a team player when it comes to WWE and just the whole storyline in general. And best of my knowledge, I don't think he holds any ill will towards it. And I think presenting Booker off the jump as a more serious threat would have definitely worked. But it's almost like we were saying with Vince McMahon with Al Snow. It's like sometimes you have to break somebody down and then rebuild them into their own image or his own image a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. And Booker, for more than most stars that came from like different companies, relatively stayed the same, you know,
Yeah.
which is
Like,
amazing.
you didn't have to repackage him. He was solid as is.
Hmm. And like he did repackage with the whole King Booker thing, but that was more of an extension of his already built-in personality, and that's what
Yeah.
I think worked about it. And now on the flip side with The Rock, who is very vicious when it comes to the microphone,
Mm-hmm.
uh, do you think The Rock, like during the actual feud of Rock
Mm-hmm.
versus Booker, do you think how much harm do you think he did to Booker's career at that time?
He definitely made it hit a snag, because you the company that you work for folded, and you were one of the top guys there. So you're coming into this company where people are looking at you, and they're already giving you the side eye, and then one of their top guys essentially just buries you without even giving you a match. He's just like, "Yo, who are you?" Kind of like a, "Why are you here?"
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that kind of, not only with that, they just they weren't booking him well.
And that was one of the main reasons why Sting was hesitant in coming in WWE too.
Hmm.
Was the "Who in the blue hell are you?" Though I will say that promo, I think it was like Booker, Stephanie, and Rhino, and Chris Jericho and The Rock, and the 2+2 Thomas Jefferson sucketh. Really, really was. I'm just like, geez, they're not giving these guys a shot.
No.
But it worked out for Booker in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing them at like this Invasion pay-per-view, almost like you said, mirror images of each other would definitely be an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, it would be fantastic to see them go, and that those two could even make it like a trilogy. Those two with how good they both were, that could have easily been a trilogy match.
I would love. I'm not sure if I don't recall. I would love if like during a match like The Rock had Booker set up for the People's Elbow, and as The Rock is like turning to bounce off the ropes, Booker just like does the spinneroonie from that position and just faces off against him.
Yeah, you have these two over the top characters with, again, the spinneroonie, the people's elbow. You have flashes of the same type of charisma, the same type of athletics. The Rock, good stamina, great moves, and then you have Booker, who is extremely agile
Hmm.
and kind of underrated for it, with like stuff like the Harlem Hangover and the scissor kick, and
Hmm.
the
The bookend.
the whole, yeah, the bookend versus rock bottom.
Yeah. They did a funny segment, like I think like Unforgiven 2001, where Booker hit like the bookend through the announce table on The Rock, and
Hmm.
Shane gave Booker T legit bookends from the announcer's table that he crashed through. Just like that's so
Nice.
stupid, but I love it. All right, my next match. It's Kurt Angle versus Lance Storm, but with a twist.
Okay.
Lance Storm is accompanied by Bret Hart,
Okay.
and Kurt Angle is accompanied by Shawn Michaels.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So Kurt Angle, as we know, Olympic gold medalist, loves America. Lance Storm, Canadian,
Mm-hmm.
loves Canada. Has
Mm-hmm.
Bret Hart in his corner. Kurt Angle, there go, gets Shawn Michaels, greatest of all time, in his
Mm-hmm.
corner. And of course, we know the history between Shawn and Bret,
Oh man, Brett
and
screwed Brett.
and having almost their pseudo, uh, not accomplices. I'm trying to think of the right word. Their pseudo proteges. There's the word. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
duke it out for them since they can't do it themselves at that time.
Yeah. And then I mean, you could do. I would even say, you could even do like a double run in. There's so much you could do with that,
Mm-hmm.
given the people that you have, and also the stories that are in play. You could do a lot with those four.
Like there's a lot of things that could happen. Like we all know, like Lance Storm, he has the Canadian Maple Leaf Boston
Mm-hmm.
Crab submission, and
Yep.
then that could transition into the ankle lock. And then
Mm-hmm.
Lance Storm also does like the super kick. What if he super kicks Angle right in front of Shawn Michaels, and Shawn Michaels kind of has to hold back from like doing a super kick of his own? Then you have
Yep.
Bret Hart always like who does not like Shawn Michaels. Imagine like a double submission thing where Lance Storm has Kurt and like the Boston Crab, and Bret has like Shawn and the Sharpshooter.
Mm-hmm.
And Lance Storm is one of those guys who, again, like this is a common theme here, who never really got his just due in WWE, and
No.
it got even worse for him when his gimmick was that he was boring. That
Not
was
only
the
that,
gimmick, yeah.
the gimmick was he was boring, and then when they gave him the dancing Lance gimmick, it's like, oh my god, why?
Like I understand what they were going for, but that could only help for so long,
Mm-hmm.
and then like it'll pique interest at least, but then after the fact it just doesn't like cut it.
But there's an interesting like through line. If you look at it, there's always like there will be somebody who was set to be like this vicious person, you know, And if it doesn't go the way that creative wants it to go, or they don't get the pop, or they don't get the traction,
Mhm.
they repackage them, and now they like dancing
That
because we've
seems
seen it time and time again.
that seems to be the go-to with WWE for a while. Like, it doesn't work, make them dance.
Yeah,
Like, it happened
yeah.
with
I mean,
Brodus, happened with Fandango, happened with
Kali,
Kali.
yeah,
Um, it was happening with Shanky, if you remember Shanky
uh,
and Jinder Mahal.
yeah, Jinder Mahal, and it
Yeah,
was just like,
shout out to
it was,
Jinder. We love Jinder.
yeah, but it was like the whole thing. It was just like, what
Yeah,
can we do?
yeah. Even happened with Kurgan.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what can we do? Oh, he'd look funny dancing. Make him dance.
Yeah, and it was just like, I don't know, the whole make 'em dance angle just felt
It just seems
like,
like a band aid over a bigger problem.
yeah, like they were just like, well, we need to fill some space somehow.
Yeah, and with Lance Storm, I think it's safe to say he was a fantastic wrestler,
Hmm.
but like his wrestling ability didn't translate to being a sports entertainer, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes.
Which is
That's why.
mhm,
That's why I said, like, when we talked about the invasion angle the first time, I said pairing him with Heyman
mhm.
would have been great because he could have been, yeah. Obviously, like there were Heyman guys throughout the ages, but like in WWE, Heyman's always with somebody. Like somebody's a Heyman guy.
Yeah,
He could have been like the first iteration of a Heyman guy because
yeah,
Heyman was great on the mic. Lance was super athletic, but not very good on the mic.
yeah. It could have
So
been
the
a big
same way,
blueprint. Yeah, the blueprint
yeah,
formula. All right, now I believe we're down to the last two matches.
yeah.
All right, let's get
So
to your semi-main.
So my semi main. Now we said, all people are involved, nothing's off the table.
Mhm.
So I have Sting and Road Warrior Animal
Mm.
versus Kane and Undertaker.
Oh, okay.
You have four people that are very good, and it's almost kind of like when you have four snacks that you like, put them together, see what happens.
Yeah.
Like make it a charcuterie board of wrestling.
Like,
Not that they're thrown together, but Sting, good worker. Animal, good worker. Kane, good worker. Taker, good worker. You have the persona of Sting, and then you have the Road Warrior, the Road Warriors with like the spikes and the face paint, so you can kind of like play off each other with that. You have Kane and Taker playing off each other as a Brothers of Destruction, so it could get like really theatrical. It could be really athletic. All these guys are they're gonna fight, they're gonna scrap, they're gonna slam. It's gonna be just a good like meat and potatoes
yeah.
match.
I definitely see that. It's almost like like this, like mixing the snacks up is like a perfect analogy. You're like, oh man, I have this PB&J sandwich. Let me throw some Malamars in there and let's see what
Yeah.
goes on. Make it a even better sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with Sting, who kind of made almost his mark as a tag team guy for a little bit. He was a part of some notable tag teams, like with Lex
Mm-hmm.
Luger, like with Jim Hellwig before he was the Warrior, and it's a definitely, and as we see with Darby Allin right now to this day before Sting's retirement, he really does the hot tag really well. Stinger Splash, the Stinger Scorpion Death
Mm-hmm.
Drop, the Scorpion Death Lock, and Animal being a tag team vet himself, and just the I know he could do like the power slam stuff as well. Very big powerhouse. I'm not sure if Hawk was in WCW at that time. I think it was just Animal at that point, right?
Yeah, it was just Animal.
Yeah, yeah, because I think he was a part of like the Magnificent Seven or something like that
Mm-hmm.
storyline, which we never got a conclusion to.
Mm-hmm.
Very shame. And then Brothers of Destruction during this time, and they even admitted themselves the Brothers of Destruction tag team as a concept is a great concept. The problem is it's almost like that Goldberg effect. What do you do when you have two of the most dominant stars in wrestling when idealistically, they could destroy every team. Now with Sting and Animal, those are some formidable opponents
Mm-hmm.
for them to kind of work off of. And it gives everybody that chance of that Sting Undertaker match that everyone's been clamoring for years and years and years.
Yeah, and then on top of that, let's say like the four of them with the theatrics that are similar. What if they formed a faction coming
Mm.
out of that? Like,
Ooh.
hey, like we liked working with you guys. Let's form something because I mean, you have the Road Warrior, the Road Warriors. You know, the like post-apocalyptic, and it's supposed to be like dismal, the future
Hmm.
kind of thing. You have Sting, who is in the rafters and he's watching people and he's brooding, and he almost kind of has a little bit of like him and Taker have flashes of each other a little bit because they would just pop up places. You know, Taker's popping out of the ring, Sting's flying through the zip line, and like and then you have Kane, who kind of like, you know, big dude, silent protagonist, uh the whole like fire, the lore, all that. So it could be like you can combine almost kind of like a Legion, you know, not, no pun intended, but a Legion of Doom in the sense of like
I
the
got what you're
comic
saying. Yeah,
books.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
just like
these.
four like forces that have interesting backstories from each other. With Undertaker,
Yeah.
it's probably one of the top storylines in WWE history. Sting's transformation into the Crow was one of the best
Hmm.
turns in history. And then you have Road Warrior Animal, who arguably started the uh just the popularity of tag team wrestling in general and one like the forefathers of it. And that group together just makes like a whole dynamic pair.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I mean they call it the Road Warrior Pop for a reason.
yeah. And this, I think this
Like,
match would probably get a Road Warrior pop.
yeah, and I mean all those guys are extremely over, and it would just be fun to see everybody play off of each other, and just kind of how that goes.
Yeah. And my semi main event is also a tag match, but it's a different kind of tag match. It's a three-way dance tag team match.
Okay.
We have the Outsiders, Kevin Nash and
Mm-hmm.
Scott Hall, versus the
Mm-hmm.
Dudley Boys versus the
Nice.
Brothers of Destruction.
Mm.
So we got WCW versus ECW versus WWE.
Okay. That would be a really good one.
Yeah, I always like the Outsiders as a concept of a tag team, just
Mm-hmm.
being like we're from the other side, and they wouldn't really say the other side, and then just kind of invading this company, but now they're representing the company to
Mm-hmm.
lead another invasion. You have the Dudleys, who were the most decorated tag team of all time, and just one of the most dominant ECW tag champions of all time. And then, like we were saying with the Brothers of Destruction, you don't really necessarily have that opposition for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like we saw with recently with Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. If you don't really have another group to work off of, it's not going to work as well.
Yeah,
And with
like.
Brothers of Destruction, with the Outsiders and Dudleys, that's more than a formidable combo to neutralize them, at least for the time being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and that would just be an overall like really good match. That would just be one of those matches that you want to make sure that you're sitting down for it. Like, it's gonna you're gonna see some stuff. You're gonna see some spots. Things are probably gonna get kind of crazy.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's a good one. That's a solid one.
Like, just imagine like Kevin Nash going for the jackknife and Taker going for the last ride, them eyeing each other down and just like hitting them at the same time. That'd be sick.
Yeah.
Scott Hall doing the survey, survey
Hmm.
time,
Yeah.
and then Dudley's of course 3Ding people.
Yeah. Like, I don't. And it's funny, like when you watch footage, other than maybe like the spear or the gore, when they're setting up the whole crowd is just going crazy, and you just hear 3D,
Yeah.
3D, 3D, like just echoing throughout the
Yeah,
arena.
3D. Yeah. And like
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen that again since I remember Dean Ambrose,
No.
John Moxley, that like people would just
Hmm.
say dirty deeds, but it again doesn't
Yeah.
really roll off the tongue as good as 3D.
Hmm.
But it's time for the main event, Marcus. Time for
All
your
right.
main event. What do you got for us?
I know you'll enjoy this one. So I have DDP, good old Diamond Dallas Page, versus Shawn Michaels in a 2 out of 3 falls match.
Ooh, okay. That's very different.
I think, two very good workers, two people that'll put on a really good show, and it also kind of reverts away from the, you know, we only play for the big boys.
Hmm.
Like you have two guys that are a bit smaller in stature compared to, your giants that are,
Hmm.
the your Big Show, your Takers, your this, but can still work really well, put on really good matches. And then just the, I went for 2 out of 3 falls, just kind of like the icing on the cake, because you could make it very dramatic and like have it be 1-to-1, and then the height, it's heightened, and then you can also use that for like storytelling elements. Like you could like do the side by side of the match, and then like go to the locker rooms and show people cheering, and like you can even like have funny skits where it's like the APA, they're betting and gambling on who do they, they're taking everybody's bets on the over under and stuff
Right,
like.
yeah, yeah.
So you can make it like not only like the final thing, but like it could be fun. It doesn't have to be super serious. Excuse me, but it could be.
Mhm.
So you can do it either way. It could be like, you could see like the pep talk of like, everybody's in the locker room and they're like hyping them up, and you could do the locker room versus locker room shots, and you could show, this person, the old school, not the old school, but like when people are walking through the arenas and people are hyping them up, and it's just like, yeah, you could play on the drama between the factions.
Yeah, and especially since DDP and Shawn Michaels, they both have finishers that come out of nowhere.
Yep.
So it gives it the kind of this match can end at any time and at any point. And the two out
Hmm.
of three fall stipulation also just gives a lot more flexibility. It's personally probably one of my favorite match types when built properly
Hmm.
because it almost gives it's almost giving the player the extra life in like a video game, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like you are allowed to like one mistake isn't going to determine the match for you. Like you still have another
Exactly.
like form, you still get another fall to play a little bit cleanly, a little bit more cautiously or recklessly if you want to end it early. So it gives a lot more advancement towards that storytelling aspect of it.
Yeah, and you can even do something like it's depending on if they want to go, face versus heel, this, that, and the third. You could do something just to like when Brock and Angle had their Iron Man match.
That's actually the first main event of SmackDown I've ever watched.
Yeah, like when they had the Iron Man match, and like Brock used the chair to
Yeah,
get the
yeah,
advantage,
yeah.
and you could do like, think about it, right? If they're, let's say it's scheduled, a 15-20 minute match, so it's like it's a good bit to chew on. Let's say in the first like 5-10 minutes somebody uses a chair. Yeah, that's a DQ, sure, but now somebody else is at, they could play it like at a detriment for the rest of the match.
Right, yeah, like the disqualification has a purpose of doing it. Like they were question I remember they were questioning that match on commentary. It's like, "Oh, why would he do that? He just gave up a fall." But then Brock just F5'd him right away and then put Kurt in the ankle
Hmm.
lock to be up 2 falls to 1, which would
Yeah.
make it like the storytelling of that match specifically. was phenomenal, and the type of story they were telling with Kurt, the champion, trying to come back from behind, but
Mm-hmm.
again, just the clock running out, and then Brock becoming that champion. And with this match, it could be a very similar thing. With like, what if there was like a double pin at the same time? Then
Yeah.
do they continue it? Do they leave it as a draw? There's a lot of different avenues you could take it.
Yeah. And you could again, these are I to me, this is one of those matches that could be like you could make that into a trilogy. You could make that into an ongoing thing. You could even kind of like almost how like certain pay-per-views have certain match types that are associated with it. You can say like, hey, it's this year and it's again DDP and Sean 2 out of 3. Who you guys got?
Yeah. It's good. All right. Now for my main event, I'm keeping the inaugural brawl concept.
Okay.
So it's 5-on-5.
All right.
And I'm playing into some of the storylines that were going on around WWE and WCW at this time.
Okay.
We got Stone Cold, Triple
Mm-hmm.
H, The Rock, Jericho, and Benoit against Hogan, Sting, Flair, Booker, and Steiner. Scott Steiner. So,
Good old Freakzilla.
explanation of the team. So, after WrestleMania 17, we saw the two-man power trip take out The
Mm-hmm.
Rock. The Rock was suspended, but then Vince brought him back to help combat WCW. So I'm going to push that up a little bit further in this attempt. So now the two-man power trip have to team with The Rock. And that being said, during that tag
Mm.
team title match between two-man power trip and Jericho and Benoit, which is regarded as one of the best Raws of all time, or best Raw matches, Jericho and Benoit defeated the two-man power trip for the tag titles. So now they all have to team with each other. And I know it's that whole can they coexist thing again, but now you have all this
Yeah.
intertwined turmoil where it's like we have to help our team, but is there anybody who's going to jump from our team to their team? And on the flip
Mm-hmm.
side, when you have Hogan, Sting, Flair, Booker, and Steiner, it's almost like a similar thing because Booker and Steiner had that rivalry for a while.
Yeah.
You have Hogan and Sting who never really saw eye to eye.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Sting and Flair, which their
Yep.
history is like a mile long. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have, like, again, you have Steiner and Hogan and Flair who never really got along either. So
Yeah.
it puts their teams at a even playing field where it's like they're so star-studded, and you have these rising stars from each team of Jericho, Benoit, Booker, and Steiner. So it's almost like a good fusion of the old guard and the new guard and the current guard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. It's a solid one. That would be again, like you said, like can they coexist?
Mm-hmm.
Can is the idea of the player bigger than the team? Like let's see if this pans out. Let's see, because you could take that so many ways.
Mm-hmm. And especially with Sting, since his history is everybody teams with inevitably just turns on him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then you have the two-man power trip who were looking to probably tease a feud before Triple H got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have The Rock, who, of course, is still sore about WrestleMania 17. And then just you'll have like a bunch of like mini dream matches in this match. Like you'll have Flair and Triple H. You'll have Steiner and Triple H. You'll have Hogan Rock, Stone Cold Rock, Sting Rock. Like everything in between. You'll have like a good mesh of in-ring stuff and also sports entertainment stuff as well.
Yeah, you have a nice mixture going on. That would be a good mix of drama, a good mix of athleticism, a good mix of storytelling. So yeah, that would be a solid one.
And it prevents Hogan from taking the fall, brother.
Oh my god. I saw a comment on a Hogan video one time, and they were just like, I want to make sure Hogan's at my funeral, so I'm properly buried. I was like, yo,
Yo, but facts though.
yeah,
Oh my god.
true, true.
Jeez. Gosh. Um, did you hear about the Scott Steiner Triple H story? So when
Like the storyline?
like not the story, like an actual like behind the scenes story,
No,
allegedly.
go ahead. What's up?
So pretty much Scott when he was in WWE and when Triple H was like the champion, they asked Scott to do a drug test, and
Hmm.
Scott Steiner's like, "Sure, I'll do a drug test right next to Triple H." And apparently, they never asked Scott Steiner for a drug test after that.
Hey,
You know.
ah, not wrong,
Yeah. Welcome
not
to this
wrong.
edition of Are They Natty?
Mm, mm.
Uh,
Good old HGH.
yeah, it's chicken and rice and broccoli. It's a good diet. Good diet. They
It
call that the
is.
Hollywood diet. When
Mm.
apparently in Hollywood they said, "Oh, it's just a lot of chicken and rice." That's the code for the good stuff.
Sure. Whatever helps these people sleep at night. Absolutely. I'm not their publicist. Do it all.
We don't encourage the use of drugs on Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars.
Yeah.
We go for clean lifestyle on this show.
Clean living. Dirty minds.
They
That's my bumper sticker.
Is
I'm
that
gonna
really the
make it.
bumper sticker?
No.
Oh,
But I should make it. Like clean living, dirty minds is actually
honestly, I
really
think
good.
you'd make dozens of dollars on that one.
A whole $30.
Before taxes.
Gotta give the man his cut, you know.
It's like allows us to live here, so gotta give it to
Mm,
Uncle Sam.
yeah,
So that
yeah,
they're very good, solid invasion cards for both of us.
yeah.
Now, is there a match that, like, out of everything that you made, is there anything
Hmm.
that you would like to see, like a long form storyline?
Um, hmm. I think Kurt and Taz would be a really good long form story.
Hmm.
Um, and again, Booker and The Rock would be great, given that like you said, the given Booker T time to flourish, and he crushed everything.
Hmm.
You gave Rock, time to flourish, and he crushed everything. So why not that? Like, why not have that be in long form storytelling? Because you're just gonna benefit. Like everybody's gonna benefit from that one.
Yeah, I 100% agree with both those choices. For me, for my card, I am like the Kurt Angle Lance thing again. Just let him cook a little bit,
Hmm.
and just like the inaugural brawl, there's so many different pathways and stories you could take with it, depending on where you want the stories to go.
Yeah, there's a lot that you can do with that.
Yeah, and I think we successfully atoned the sins of the invasion.
Yeah. Well, I also have a couple just random undercard matches for like a Raw
Yeah,
if
that's
you wanted
right.
to
You
hear
did.
them.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, why not?
All right. So I was like, okay, pay-per-view aside, like who could we get for some entertaining matches from like mid to undercard? So I have Kiwi versus Goldust.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like that would be funny. They're both good wrestlers. They're both like quote unquote like the freaks of their brand, and misunderstood, and they seem to be a little bit left of center. So I had that. I had 3 count versus Too Cool and Rakishi.
Hmm. Okay.
You get very musically. You got singing, you got dancing, you got fighting. What more do you need? You know,
It's like if West Side Story was in tights.
yeah. That's all you need. I have Tajiri versus Steve Blackman.
Ooh, okay. All right. All right.
Both fighters,
Lethal
both
Weapon versus the
yeah,
Japanese Buzzsaw.
Buzzsaw, yeah,
Love it.
like let them just duke it out in the ring. And then my second to last one, I have Conan versus Road Dogg.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I
Like
like it.
both faction guys, both not necessarily the head of the table, but recognizable, great styles, team players. Both can cut
Entertaining.
really, yeah, both cut very good promos. Like, even that one could be like they could like duke it out for the Intercontinental Championship or like the European Championship. Like
Yeah.
that could be like
Both
an
solid
ongoing
guys
thing.
to always keep in the mix.
Yeah, like they work well as singles competitors. They work well as tag team competitors. They work well as a group.
Mhm.
So yeah. And then my last one, I have Steven Richards versus Lance Storm.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Again, great workers, great matches. They're not giant guys, and give them a little bit of rub.
Mhm.
I would honestly say put them in the main event of just like a SmackDown or a Raw,
Yeah. Just
because
let them go at it.
yeah, let them go, let them duke it out, because with this angle you had so many people that you could have just like you had people that could have just came out of the woodwork and been way more successful if you just gave them matches and just let them go.
That, that's
So yeah.
that's all you need. Yeah, that's very solid. Like Raw, SmackDown show that happens after pay per view, before the pay per view. You got like a lot of, like you said, a lot of talent that is underutilized, and that's the problem when you have a story as big as this. You're gonna have to kind of compromise between two rosters, but of course, with WWE, they kind of skew towards their own guys rather than
Hmm.
the WCW guys, which I guess makes sense from a company standpoint because it's like you'd rather deal with the devil you do know than the devil you don't know.
Don't know,
Yeah,
but you own both the devils,
yeah,
so
yeah. So it's like
uh,
is what it
own them
is.
all.
Well,
Yeah.
this has been a fantastic fantasy booking episode of the
Yeah, man.
Invasion Card. Marcus, thank you so much for joining me and for the idea and the platform. Is there anything you want to plug before we skedaddle over here?
Nah, man. As always, it's good to see you. It's good to nerd out. I can't wait to be back. I know there was another one that you and I were chit chatting about. That'll be a solid one.
Yes, indeed. We're no spoilers right here. We're not gonna do a
Nah,
heel turn on you, but
no,
we don't
no.
mean
But
to.
yeah, no, it's always a good time. I appreciate you, and
Thank you,
thank
man.
you for having me, man.
Thank you for coming on. And again, this was an episode of Wrestling Retold and Relive with Richie Mars. You could always follow us on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the TikTok at Retold Richie Mars. We just surpassed 1,600 followers on TikTok.
Nice,
So get on the
nice.
train.
Yeah, and just like last episode, I said the only thing I really use is Snap. So if you want to tell me that all my takes are garbage, if you want to say I'm gonna bury all your
Yeah.
takes, you don't know anything, you want to hit me with the like good old JCP promo, you want to hit me with the corny
Ooh,
promo,
yes, do it, do it, do it.
hit me at Snapchat SIRMAV. I do use Instagram. It's QUEZMAV. And again, thank you so much, man.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode. TTFN Tata for now. We'll see you next time. Later.
Yay.